Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike. Today I want to talk to you about G.I. Joe, the vintage real American hero from 1982 to 1994. So many people say that this toy line is really hard to collect, it's very expensive, and I'm here to shatter that and give you some tips and tricks to make the largest vintage boys toy line readily available, easy to collect, and cheaper to collect. Now I'm talking about loose and trying to complete those loose figures, getting yourself a collection together. I'm going to give you these tips and tricks. And how do I know these tips and tricks work? Because I've done it myself over and over. These are the tips and tricks I use to collect on a budget, affordably, collecting vintage G.I. Joe, and it's getting cheaper by the day. We're going to talk about this and more coming up. First tip or trick that you have to know when you're collecting any toy line, actually, not just G.I. Joe, but you got to know what you're looking for. So when you look at other toy lines, you may say, hey, there's 12 figures, 4 vehicles, I want it all. But when you look at hundreds, if not 300 figures in this line, that was from 1982 to 1994. So in that time frame, I don't know the exact number that's on there, but there's a ton. There are a ton. You need to investigate. This is yojo.com. One of the best resources out there. Breaks it down by year. You can go into the figures, the vehicles, play sets, all that kind of stuff. So there's so much that they've put it all in one spot. It's pretty simple to get to. Clicking on one figure gives you all of this information. You see the figure from all sides, all armored up. This is the Cobra Bat, and it's helpful to see all the accessories down below. Close-up pictures, you can click on that picture, get a zoom in on it, and see exactly what it is. The other thing is the color, because there's going to be a whole lot of different colored weapons out there that the exact same mold, but they were recolored for some accessory packs, or even recolored to put with another figure, so you can kind of learn all this information as you go. But getting a baseline is very important. Having to know, are you going to go for the entire run of every single figure, or are you just going to focus on a few years? Are you just going to focus on your favorites? Are you going to start at the beginning and work to the end? There's a lot of different ways to go. That's your roadmap. You have to make that plan. The other site that is really good is 3D Joe's. Now this is sort of a newer site than Yo-Joe, but it is definitely a different take. You click on each one of them. Right now, when I took this screen capture, they were all spinning around, so you can see the 3D. And I want to show this one with the vehicles and do the same thing with the figures, but the vehicles are on there, and that's pretty good too. So you can utilize this site the same way as the Yo-Joe, and in fact, you might get different angles or maybe a better look at it by checking out this site. Both are great starting points. Next, you need to develop a plan for yourself, and part of that plan you're developing, are you going to go for figures? Are you going to go for vehicles? Are you going to go for play sets? Are you going to do it all at once? And with that, are you going to focus on a time frame? So I kind of suggest that you pick a handful of vehicles, a handful of figures, and maybe one major play set to work on at a time. That is my suggestion, because that's what I did. I didn't try to do a Terrordrome and a flag at the same time. In fact, 6 months it took me to get this flag together. It is not a small ordeal, and it wasn't a one-time purchase. And yes, I did get this flag for about $1,100, but it took about 6 months. So getting down into the nitty-gritty here, looking at my first actual tip for buying, I say buy in bulk. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, it's expensive, so obviously they're on a budget, and you say, well, buying in bulk's probably not for me. But I'm going to show you how buying in bulk's actually for everyone. So when you look at this lot here, it ended up selling for $432, and plus there's probably tax and shipping, so let's say $500. You're sitting there saying, Mike, you're giving us tips and tricks for cheap figures, and yet you're trying to say that that's a good price? Well, if you look at all of the figures, you divide it all out. You look at each of the vehicles and all of those purchases that are made, all that's gone into it, that's not really a bad price. It comes out to about $7 a figure. Or if you were to factor in the vehicles too, $6 a figure and like $8 a vehicle or something along those lines. Here's another lot that went for about the same price, which is just figures and accessories. So another tip that I have is never take the first big picture for granted. You see a picture that's in there and you go, yeah, that's just a bunch of figures. Some of them are broken. Some of them, well, these are heavy hitters in here. These are some heavy hitters. You got a Shipwreck, which is pretty good. You've got the Crimson Guard in there, and you've got a Quick Kick. And even if they're not really that highly expensive, they're only like $20 figures each. There are over 60 figures here for $400 and something, which is actually a pretty good value. Again, $6 or $7 a figure is not bad, and seeing as how there's not a ton of duplicates, so there's a lot of things to look at. I mean, you probably do want duplicates if you're troop builders, but you don't want duplicates of just regular common figures. Digging deeper into that lot, there's actually all of these weapons and accessories. So this is something else to consider when you're buying in bulk. You need to look at all of the pictures in there. Some sellers, they just cannot capture everything in this bulk lot in one picture, so they break it up into multiple pictures. There are actually more valuable figures that were listed also in this lot that weren't in that first picture. So there's a couple of tips and tricks looking into collecting these. My next tip or trick would be, how do you search for these? So when you look at this, this is one screenshot of one search that's showing how to search for something, just vintage G.I. Joe. Pops up 59,000 results. Now, how do you dig through 59,000 listings? Well, first of all, you're going to have probably a third of those that aren't anything to do, have nothing to do with what you're looking for in the Real American Hero. So, you got to throw those out. And so with that, you're going to have to do some legwork and sift through stuff. This is best match, which seems to be like a default on eBay for some reason. I suggest two things: newest first and lowest price. And then, of course, ending soonest. And so those are three ones to look at differently. But if you want, and you spend 3 hours sifting through everything available on eBay, then you start searching daily, a couple times a day, newly listed, you can stay up on it relatively easily. Even though there are 59,000 results, there's a lot of stuff out there. Of course, the next thing you want to do is kind of familiarize yourself with what's the expensive stuff, what's the cheap stuff. The best way to do this is through completed listings. This is a completing listing for a lot. Again, one of my suggestions, buy bulk. A lot of figures, and this went for $179. Now, on the surface, that doesn't sound like a great deal, but if you start breaking it down into piece by piece, some of these figures and then the vehicles themselves adding up to quite a bit, and it probably is valued right at $179. But look through your completed listings and find out the value of the items that you're looking for so that you know what to expect to pay. And really, you could ask other people, but nothing really does give you a good price other than the current market value in completed listings. On eBay is usually the best place. eBay is still the largest place to go get all these finished items. Next up, I want to say that searching for auctions versus buy it now. Let's break these down because there are different styles to it. Number one, you want to look and see starting bid. Hey, we're going to start this whole table of accessories off for $1. Let it run 7 days, 9 days. This is annoying. It's not fun. To me, it's not fun at all. It's just kind of like if you get it for a price you want, you got to look through it and tell yourself in your mind, I think this is worth $100. I think this is worth $50. I think it's worth $200. I mean, you could itemize it and say it's worth $379.27 on the current market value based on all my research. But with that, you have to say, what would you be willing to pay for it? Set yourself a timer so that you give yourself like 10 minutes before it's over so you can be in front of it. I do not trust sniper sites, and I don't use sniper sites. I tried them out. I didn't like them. So with that, I get in front of it. But this is a tip. Be in front of it physically. Be there ready to bid. And it's better than trusting sniper sites. I know a lot of people do, but hey, it works for some. It doesn't work for everyone. So some of these listings, some of these auctions that maybe start at $1 and they work their way up to maybe go for 60, that could maybe go for 100. So one of the things, the more you dig through the 69,000 listings, which a lot of them are auctions, the better chances you are at getting something that is going to be a good deal. So when you find that, you find 6 of them, 8 of them, I got to tell you right now, you might get frustrated getting outbid, but it's just one of those things. Just look to the next one and the next one and the next one, because there's so much of this out there. Missing out and losing an auction, or hey, I think this lot is worth $67 and somebody got it for $68. Let's go to the next one, because guess what? 8 more auctions down the road, you're going to be winning. because some people are going to get tired out or they just don't need it anymore. So let's say you stumble across a set of parts that you want to buy, and you say, okay, it's a buy it now lot or make offer and all this kind of stuff. So I prefer buy it now. Why? Because I don't want to have a question mark on whether or not I'm going to have these items. I want to know that it's coming in the mail. I can work on other parts and pieces towards my collection and move on. And then the other thing, the other tip of buy it nows, and you can use this with auctions too, is look at the seller. Usually a seller does not sell in a vacuum. They have more G.I. Joe stuff out there, up to hundreds of listings. So you want to buy from a seller that's selling multiple items. So do a buy it now, make an offer, make 6 offers to the same person. Usually some of the big sellers, and there are big sellers on eBay that sell lots of Joe stuff, they have it automatically set up. You add 6 things to your cart, they only automatically charge you for 1 shipping, and that's the way to save money, because you can really erode your buying power with shipping. Yeah, shipping over and over. Each $1 part costs $5 to ship it. That sucks. My next tip, and this is actually with every toy line. A lot of these tips are for every toy line, not just G.I. Joe, but I use them for G.I. Joe. Get used to fixing figures. Buy some new screws and O-rings. Of course, they sell that on eBay. Sellers sell it. It's actually cheaper to buy them from a seller on eBay that's bought 10,000 and broken up into 100 increments than trying to go to Lowe's. You're going to find it way cheaper buying it from someone that's bought it in bulk and broke it down to still be 100 O-rings in bulk, and they give you screws with it. That works so much better than trying to source your own stuff, in my opinion. I believe that. But anyhow, they're still making a profit. But yes, you can piece your own figures together, build your own figures from scratch, especially the really expensive ones. It's worth your time in the long run. And if you get a figure that's already broken or has a problem, you'll know how to swap those out. So next tip is to look everywhere. And this is for anything. Don't just go to one source. There's Facebook, Etsy, there is a Mercari site that you can go to. Maybe you have local toy shops. Maybe you have some friends source out. Network with friends to find deals. And if you end up buying one of those lots that has extra parts in it, you can resell those. And they might be worth more than the Joe parts in that lot. Let's get into that. Remember that $432 lot we were looking at? Now I'm just picking on a few lots that I found, but I see it in almost every large bundle lot. If you look in here at the top right, there is a silver grenade that goes with Rambo, Coleco Rambo. That grenade's worth $5 to $10 depending on who you're talking to. Then you can scroll down below that. You see a helmet, which is a mask that goes to the Venom in Kenner Mask. Scroll down a little bit more. There's another mask thing. Scroll down a little bit more, and you find a $25 missile that goes to the Mask Goliath race car. So there's a lot of stuff in this that's not even for G.I. Joe that's worth more than the G.I. Joe stuff. You can resell this. Of course, you gotta know what you're doing and dealing with, but at the end of the day, you sort through it. I need this, I don't need that, and just put your other stuff up for sale. Make a little bit of money back to keep going. Last tip, most importantest tip is take your time. It's real easy when you start collecting vintage or get back into collecting vintage, pick back up on collecting your vintage G.I. Joe, to go overboard, to try to do too much too fast. And I see that all the time, and I understand that. I understand trying to dive deep into it and just going too crazy. But understand, if you take your time, spread it out, spread your budget out, and then you can see ups and downs in the market. You see new stuff getting posted every day. If you miss something today, it'll come up tomorrow or a few months from now. There are some other toy lines that are a bit crazy. Stuff like in humanoids where they don't all pop up all the time. It's harder to collect some of those more obscure toy lines. But when it comes to G.I. Joe, there's absolutely nothing obscure about G.I. Joe, aside from the really rare, expensive Melloways, which a lot of people don't have a lot of ties to. Let me know what you think about these tips and tricks for collecting vintage G.I. Joe in 2022 and into 2023. And I'd like to know your comments below. Do you have more tips and tricks that I left out that help everyone out? Like and subscribe, and Titanium Hanger out.
Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose? To defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.